For the past 2 weeks, as you know, there have been shocking revelations from the ICAC hearing in New South Wales into the origin of a $100,000 political donation to the New South Wales Labor Party in the weeks leading up to the 2015 state election. Today, the Chinese billionaire at the centre of this inquiry has broken his silence, denying he was the source of the LD bag containing $100,000 in cash. We've also heard claims of serious discrepancies in evidence from former Labor boss Kayla Murnane and former Upper House Labor MP Ernest Wong. This week, our reporters hit the street to get your thoughts on this hearing in New South Wales specifically, but more broadly, political donation rules. I'll get into the ins and outs of today's hearing with my panel a little later, but first I want to bring in Sky News Northern Australia correspondent and our resident Friday night straight talker, Matt Cunningham, to go through your feedback. Matt, thanks very much for your time. Since this ICAC hearing was launched, there's been a broader discussion on political donation rules across the board. Graham Richardson, my fellow Sky colleague, has called for public purse to be funding political parties, or more of the public purse, I have to say. It already does quite a bit of heavy lifting with the funding anyway. But look, surely what we need here is just that political parties have to follow the rules. What did you find out talking to real people out there on the streets around the country this week?
Well, it's hardly surprising that they agree with that sentiment completely, Peter. I mean, seriously, let's look at this situation. We're talking about political parties who are given hundreds of thousands of dollars in donations. They're clearly misusing these donations, and then they're trying to turn around. The solution to this, we're told, is to turn around and say that the taxpayers should fund these political parties instead. I think the sentiment of the public is that the political parties, if they're going to take this money, should do the right thing. Now, we're seeing these issues not just in New South Wales. You just spoke to Peter Gleeson about what's happening in Queensland. We've had a serious situation here in the Northern Territory as well, where the chairman of the local turf club, well, his companies gave $100,000 in donations to the Labor Party here in the Northern Territory before the last election. The turf club's just been given a $12 million grant to build a new grandstand, and guess who's been awarded by the turf club the tender to build that grandstand? Well, it's the same chairman whose companies made those donations before the election. So I think this whole thing, the public basically thinks it stinks. They want to see more transparency around these political donations, and more to the point, they want to see these political parties doing the right thing. Here's a bit of what the people had to say when we hit the streets this week.
Yes, I have a lot of concerns because there seems to be always an unanswered question as to who's dealing with who and who's allowing themselves to be compromised in the positions to hold.
Yes, especially when it's a lot of unions, absolutely. And we know that the unions kind of pull the strings, I suppose, given who we've got in power up here in Victoria.
In the end, we have to make sure that funds that people use for their campaigns don't end up being paid back in a special program or other things that don't work out well.
I have a concern about all political donations, period. Yeah, because fundamentally we are officially stating that bribery is okay.
Absolutely. Well, you want to make sure that everything is above board. Well, you don't want the underhand, quid pro quo type situation. It's got to be for genuine reasons.
Absolutely, yes, because there's clearly some self-vested interest in some of these donations where they come from.
I think if they're foreign, I think it poses a real risk as far as the clarity and the motives behind them.
Just generally, they shouldn't get any donations, I think.
It's a form of bribery because it allows other communities where the monies might be flowing from get certain paybacks and benefits, and I really think it needs to stop here and now.
Yes, I do, because most of them are probably dodgy.
Yes, because at the moment it's far too easy for things to be slid under the counter or popped in brown paper bags, and there's absolutely no teeth of any sort with any ICAC concept.
Well, Matt, I don't think there was one person there that said they think the rules are being upheld or that they're comfortable with arrangements as they stand. And, there was a woman there towards the end of your package that basically encapsulated the concern people have about bribery, and that underscores your example out of the Northern Territory. Now, I'm not saying that's bribery before I get a legal letter, but I'm just saying the apprehension people have that there can be a quid pro quo in these arrangements.
Well, and it's just exactly as Peter Gleeson was saying to you before, Peter. The optics of these sort of things are terrible. The optics of Jackie Trad and that house purchase in Queensland, are absolutely deplorable. And the public see straight through this sort of thing. They don't believe for a minute some of the excuses that have been given. They don't believe for a minute that someone's husband could buy a house without his wife knowing about it. So I think, the public have had a gutful of this sort of thing. Now, interestingly, when we talk about the New South Wales Labor Party, I think that it is a special case. It's been riddled with these sort of issues for years. It's been interesting to hear some of the sorts of excuses we've heard from New South Wales Labor politicians and some of the solutions they've offered up. You spoke about Graham Richardson talking about publicly funded donations to political parties. We just also heard Christina Keneally this week talk about moving the office from Sussex Street. I don't know if any of those things are really the answer to this problem. I think it's a cancer that's probably spread and is far worse than a problem that can be solved by just moving an office. And I think the public agree with that. In fact, if you have a listen to this compile from people we spoke to on the streets, there are some people who believe that the New South Wales Labor Party is beyond redemption.
It perhaps takes a big event like this to really get them to start from the bottom, end it all.
Just investigate fully the facts and what's happened and make people accountable when they've done the wrong thing.
I think whoever accepts his bag made a huge mistake because it doesn't look good for the Labor Party.
Think a bit more about what they're doing, I think, really.
A bit more transparent?
A bit more transparent.
Don't take any notice of the union, for a start. The union's running the Labor Party.
Do you think Labor Party can finally clean up its act with regards to political donations?
Well, you'd think so, wouldn't you? Not doing much for us.
Do you think the Labor Party can finally clean up its act?
No.
Why not?
I don't think they're trying very hard.
Yeah, I don't believe all that. They're just useless.
What do you think they can do to regain trust?
Get rid of them.
Do you think the New South Wales Labor Party can finally clean up its act?
Oh, I don't know about that.
Pretty tough sentiment there from people all around the state of New South Wales. I have to say, Matt, if this was a company, a corporation, someone selling product to consumers, they'd shut down this company, they'd restart it, they'd have a new branding exercise, they'd probably even change its name. It's pretty crook for New South Wales Labor.
It certainly is. And I think people, I've been asked the question before, do people think they've been lied to? I think it's become worse than that. I think it's got to the stage where people expect they're going to be lied to. And that's, why you see such a high level of cynicism among the public. And I think it's another reason why trust in our politicians these days is at an all-time low.
Yeah, couldn't have said it better myself, Matt. Thanks very much for your time tonight. Thanks for pulling together views from real people out there in the streets. That's what Friday Feedback's all about. Thanks, Matt Cunningham.